Hey, you, Miss Hildy, here, come over here.
Okay. Welcome all you retired people to another one of our monthly meetings. In April, we are going back to in-person for the monthly meetings as well as the classes, and hoping that will work out well. The monthly meetings will resume at Grace Methodist Church. We won't start refreshments yet, so the meeting will be as it is now at beginning at 10:30 rather than earlier, but you're welcome to come anytime after, say, 10 o'clock. One other item this morning, please mute yourselves so that your background noise doesn't interfere with the speaker. I'm pleased to introduce Tom Imbuden this morning. He's an associate professor in information technology at SIU, where he's been for the last 10 or 12 years. He's interested in hacking, both international and perhaps we could say local. What comes across as scams, what might be threatening to us, as well as to big companies. He's particularly interested in the state of information security in nonprofit organizations. That would be us. And if you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat where he can see them anytime, but we'll particularly look for them after he's finished speaking. Again, please mute your machine and welcome, Tom. It's yours.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen.
I should say that we're very impressed with your background.
This is one of our classrooms. It's my favorite place whenever I get interviewed for TV or anything like that. It gives me a very technically techie vibe, so I like it. All right, everybody can see the slides, correct? All right, well, thank you, Roland, for the introduction. I'm Tom Imbuden, and I've been teaching information security primarily here at SIU. I teach other classes, but that's been my focus since I started back in, I think it was 2008. And today I've prepared something I call What You Need to Know About Hackers and Protecting Yourself in 2022. I'm going to go ahead and see if get my mouse back here. I'm going to tell you just a quick little overview about some of the tech offerings for students at SIU and some of the student organizations that might even be of interest to some of you. Then we're going to talk about some recent hacks. There's hacks happening every day. We'll talk about what just happened last week. And then we'll talk about some of the big things you may have heard of or even been affected by over the last year and a half. And as we talk about those, I want to describe some of the motivations of the different attackers for those specific larger breaches, who those attackers might be. Sometimes attribution of attacks is difficult, but then also common themes of the attacks. We'll look at some scams and some tactics that you might have even seen come across your messages or emails, some tips for staying safe. And then one of my favorites is some tools that you can use to help. And one of the things that I like in particular is helping people find free tools that are useful and can help you stay safe on your computing devices and smartphones. So with that, what's the deal with information security? Studying technology at SIU, I'm in the iTech program. We offer a bachelor's degree and a minor. The computer science department here offers 2 different bachelor's degrees, master's degree, PhD degrees. We're now in the School of Computing, and you can find information about our school's offerings at soc.siu.edu. And with the new reorganization, we're now within the College of Engineering, Computing Technology, and Math. So we're excited to be there and aligned with computing-related programs, and hopefully creating some synergy and some new opportunities for students. A couple real quick technology RSOs that we have here at SIU, and specifically that are out of our iTech program. One is the SIU Security Dogs. They're a security-focused student group. They prepare for the collegiate cyber defense competitions, which is a kind of an NSF funded cyber hacking and defense competition that occurs every year. It starts with a state and moves up to regionals and nationals. And it's one of the best learning opportunities on campus, if not the best, for learning about cyber security and what's actually happening out there to companies and organizations. Because during these competitions, the students get thrown real world attacks, and it's their job to defend against them and to implement protections, analyze the threats, and when the bad guys are successful, write reports describing the incidents just like you'd have to do in the real world. It's a lot of fun, an organization that I've been involved with since I started here at SIU. And then we have our Tech Dogs, which is a service-focused RSO, another group of students that's aim is to try to help provide technology services throughout the region. I like to use funny memes in my classes, and I picked a couple to share with you. I mean, who can't appreciate a dog hacking their vet's computer system? My daughter liked this when I helped her choose these this morning. So the impacts. The reason why this is something that we're talking about is because of the impacts of cybercrime. And as all of you have seen, awareness of cybercrime, impacts of cybercrime are, have increased. I've been teaching for about 12 years, and I have seen what was once sort of like these narrowly focused hacks against specific organizations, targets, expand, and the types of attacks being more severe, and the reach to even beyond the large corporations with the big pocketbooks to, the people we see sitting here in this Zoom, our college students. Anybody who has an online presence or an email account or a social media account has probably had some sort of, attempt at getting information or, the precursor to what could have been the falling victim to a cyber scam. And that ultimately costs time, ultimately costs money. And since, money is getting to where it's a significant amount nowadays, it's making the news, and it's something that more and more people are thinking about. And thankfully, that's a good thing. This group, Cybersecurity Ventures, put out this infographic in 2020. Sometimes it's hard to get more recent information, but this one estimates damages for global cybercrime, $6 trillion US a year. I saw another expected prediction that was for 2025, and I had my notes, but I lost it. I think it was 15 trillion. It was a huge. It was something like 15% increase in cybercrime damage costs over the years from 2022 to 2025. And I mean, we're talking, third, fourth largest economy in the world type of scale. So lots of money. And if you think about that, in any industry, legitimate industries where there's that amount of money out there, they grow, and more players get in them. And that's what's happening here with cybercrime. The amount of criminal organizations that are perpetrating cybercrime has increased. They are well known, certain ones. They hit large organizations, they hit small home users and small businesses, and ultimately, the aim of most cybercrime is to find some way to monetize that breach, monetize that person's computer that they were able to infect with malware, to monetize the account that they were able to compromise by tricking people into giving a password up. And that monetization is what drives people to get into this illegitimate industry. So you can see some costs associated with that here. So in the last week, if you're interested in cybersecurity or technology, one of the best resources, and I use these in my classes all the time, are just podcasts. There's lots of podcasts if you use the Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anything like that, that'll give you like a short weekly rundown of the news and technology and cybercrime. And so this one here, which is a podcast, I just listened to this one on the way in. This is from last Friday, Cybersecurity Today. And it was about a 20-minute long, recap of last week. So just last week, we had a couple of important things that were released and talked about. One, instead of talking about a breach or a hack to lead, there was a call by a group of technology leaders and organizations for transparency and security in breaches and security practices. What they mean is, companies, it's been said a lot. There's a kind of a universal truth, sort of. There are two different types of companies that have been hacked and those that don't know they've been hacked yet or haven't been hacked yet. And so the call by these industry leaders is for these organizations across the board to be open with information and be honest when they've suffered breaches, to explain the practices that they put in place, the culture of security at the organization, so that the customers understand and are not felt to be left in the dark when something bad happens. And we've seen over the years that organizations who kind of take the backwards approach of when they get breached, try to cover it up, try to lie about it, put it off as long as possible, those are the ones that suffer the worst in losses in terms of, not retaining customers, loss to reputation, penalties that might be levied, and also within the technology community, there can be punishments such as, like a browser like Firefox may no longer support the use of a piece of software because of the way that software manufacturer handled a data breach. And if Firefox or if an iPhone no longer lets you install your app because your company didn't disclose their breach properly, that can be a business ending decision. That can be a big impact for companies. So that's one thing that came out of last week. Another one, we've all heard of Samsung. Samsung was hit by a cyber criminal gang called Lapsus, which has been very active recently. 150 gigabytes of data was leaked from Samsung, and Lapsus has got this data, and it includes the phone source code for the tablets and the Galaxy products. So does anybody here, you have a Samsung Galaxy? Tablet, phone, they're pretty common. What has been leaked is the code that runs those phones and those tablets. And why is that important? Two reasons. If people have the source code, which is the pre-compiled programming of how that system, how that operating system and phone works, they can do analysis of that software because they've got the blueprints, and they can find problems with that software that they can leverage for future exploitation of that software in terms of creating, viruses or other types of malware that can take advantage of it. So when source code is leaked, it gives people an opportunity to really pour over those instructions for the machines to use and find ways that they can manipulate and take advantage of to, and again, monetize those devices that people have by making them do stuff that you don't intend them to, making them send out spam emails, making them participate in crypto mining, which is another common way of monetizing hacked machines. And then the second is when the source code is leaked, that's bad for Samsung because it represents, millions of dollars of research and development, or billions of dollars in probably the case of Samsung and these, flagship appliances that they offer. If a company in another country gets the source code and the information about Samsung's operating system, the tools and features that the phone uses, then they can simply set up shop to make a copycat version of those phones and sell them cheaper. And if a company out of another country can start manufacturing, and we've seen this a lot with like Apple products, counterfeit Apple products and things like that, then the market share of Samsung diminishes. These counterfeit phones that could be made by leaked source code by unscrupulous companies and manufacturers in other countries, they'll be cheaper, but they won't provide the ongoing security protections and features that you'd expect of a big manufacturer of electronics and phones like Samsung. Another just from the last week was this NVIDIA. You may have heard of this company. This is a company that has kind of pioneered the graphics accelerators, the chips that are in computers that allow you to play the high-end video games. They're also commonly used today in crypto mining because they can provide mathematical computations at very, very high speeds. And so this NVIDIA company is a large one that has their products all over the place. What was stolen from them was what's called code signing certificates. And these are security protections that when you install very special software that can reach deep into your computer operating system. If you've heard the term drivers are pieces of software that help control how hardware on your system works. So that's a big deal. Those are reaching directly into the most inner parts of the computer. And so what was stolen was these code signing certificates, which NVIDIA uses to validate and verify that software they release is legitimately from them and is what you want when you need to update your systems. Well, bad guys who have stolen these code signing certificates can create malware or viruses or other types of bad software, and then use these certificates to impersonate the legitimate company NVIDIA so that your computer thinks the malware they're installing is actually something from this legitimate company. And that provides a leg up on installing malware on your computer or phones, that type of thing. And again, this one was from Lapsus. A couple other real quick. Adafruit, a company out of New York, they were reported to have had a training database which was full of real customer data open to public access. So customers that purchased electronic components from this company had their data, which the company was using for training purposes within their organization, put out inadvertently for public access on internet accessible sites that may have personal information like email addresses. Sometimes it can have password hashes, which are like kind of cryptographically stored representations of your passwords. But who knows? Information about customers put out there. And then lastly, there's so much about this going on. I don't want to talk a lot about it, but Russia and Ukraine. and the invasion. There's been a lot reported about that, ongoing attacks from both sides against each other, website defacements, trying to knock each other, government institutions offline, their web presence offline, trying to protect against that. Ukraine has recently seen volunteer cyber army folks come and use their skills and their knowledge to help protect their infrastructure. And if you've ever heard of the hacker group Anonymous, they wear the white Guy Fawkes masks. They have come out and declared war on Russia, which who knows what that can mean. Anonymous is a loose group of kind of thousands or maybe tens of thousands of hackers of all skill levels and backgrounds that kind of band together under this moniker of Anonymous in order to kind of hack for a social justice goals in many cases. Other cases, they just have bones to pick with people, but in this case, it's kind of what they call hacktivism. So let's talk real quick about some recent significant hacks and breaches. And what do you remember from the last year? When we talk about these, I'll tell you a little bit about the attackers and their motivation, and in some cases, true attribution of who the attackers were can be difficult. Sometimes the attackers are known, but because of who they are or where they're from or their connections, our law enforcement or government doesn't choose to publicly say this was done by this group. A lot of times that means we have speculation within our cybersecurity community, but you never know whether or not the true bad guys behind some of these attacks are known, and they're just being kind of overlooked because we're doing the same thing and we want the same kind of courtesy. I don't know if that's the right word, and I'm not talking about the U.S. and financial crimes, but with other types of United States sponsored activities in the cyber realm against those that might be against us. And lastly, were you impacted by any of these? So before I show you the first 3 slides of what I consider to be some of the biggest, do you remember? Anybody remember some of the big hacks from the last year or so?
Sometimes seem to be banks' credit cards that affect us.
Okay, yep. Banks and credit cards definitely were on the list. Any others? There were a couple of really big ones. Last year, about June timeframe, one made the news. East Coast, critical infrastructure. We'll go ahead. Colonial Pipeline. You remember the Colonial Pipeline? This was a significant one. So Colonial Pipeline is an example that we are seeing more and more of. And that's where we've seen cyber attacks that start with ones and zeros over networks and in servers, really having an impact and disruption on physical in real life activities and processes. This Colonial Pipeline was the victim of a ransomware attack, and the ransomware attack was a pretty sophisticated one, and that means that usually it's perpetrated by a cybercrime gang rather than some fly-by-night teen hacker in the basement of their parents' house, like which stereotypically we see those pictures of them in the black hoodie sitting in the basement hacking away. These larger types of attacks are every bit as organized and have the resources given to them as some of the legitimate technology companies that are working to prevent it. In some countries, cybercrime is a legitimate business, and the government and law enforcement kind of look the other way. So the Colonial Pipeline was hit with ransomware. If I'm sure we've probably all heard of ransomware, but ransomware is one of the kind of most challenging types of hacks that I think we have today. And just personally, up until maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I did private IT consulting and work. And when I started to see ransomware getting on the scene, that's when I decided that I just didn't have the time to be able to support the companies I was helping, and be confident that that they could make decisions that I'd be able to help them recover for, or if they made decisions that were against kind of what I suggested and they got hit by one of these, that I may not be able to help them recover. And that was a scary thought for me. Ransomware is it's a huge problem globally. Big companies, little companies, individuals, and that's where it started. Ransomware started with individuals, home users that would get sent emails and tricked to click a link. Ransomware is a type of malware being malicious software, that is designed to find the data that's important to an organization, and using very, very strong encryption, cryptographically scramble that data in a way that the data owners, in this case Colonial Pipeline, can't access it. And the bad guys who do this then oftentimes will start some sort of a timer saying, you've got this amount of time to pay us a ransom. And if you pay us the ransom, we will unlock your data. And that's been happening for, close to 10 years. And it's gotten way more sophisticated. There's, very, very slick organizations who have a really, really, sharpened sort of approach to doing ransomware. There are groups, organizations that are consulting groups that help companies negotiate with ransomware perpetrators. And so it's here, and it's here to stay, and it's makes a lot of money for these bad guys. Officially, law enforcement typically says don't pay the ransom. But from what I've seen with some of these larger hacks, and even some locally that I've seen where ransomware has hit organizations, paying the ransom usually results in getting your data back pretty quickly and pretty reliably, which can be the path of least resistance to getting your operations back online. Now, the flip side is you may pay an organization that just decides, no, we're not going to, we've got your money, see you later. We never respond anymore after you ask us to unlock your stuff. That's the flip side. But it is, not within these larger cybercrime organizations that use ransomware as their kind of MO. It's not within their interest to operate that way. If they see, if a company sees that one cyber gang, did ransomware to another business, and then they got paid, and then they didn't give them their data back, then that ransomware group won't be trusted. Their business credibility is diminished, and they're not going to be trusted for the other victims when it comes to it. So with the Colonial Pipeline, disrupted their operations. You probably remember there were problems getting oil and up and down the East Coast. I think I read there's 5,500 miles of Colonial Pipeline. In order to get the ransomware problem resolved. It's reported they paid about 75 Bitcoin, which is approximately $4 million back then. And that later, that was a June, July timeframe. November of last year, the State Department put a $10 million bounty on the organization who perpetrated this crime. This is another one. This is a big one that made a lot of news, but to the general public may not have been explained in such a way to really drive home the impact. So this company, Cassia, makes a product called SolarWinds Orion. And what that product is an IT system administration tool. So it's a tool that allows people like myself, when I worked as a technology administrator, the people like here that run our servers at SIU and run the services that we all rely on, they would use these tools, SolarWinds Orion, to help them more efficiently manage the hundreds of servers or the routers or the wireless access points, the services, the software. They would use these tools to make their jobs easier, more reliable, more efficient. And they were by and large a widely respected platform for doing that, SolarWinds Orion. What happened was what is called a supply chain attack. And the sophistication of this attack is impressive because of that, it's been possibly tied to a nation state actor as the source. The attack type was what was called a supply chain attack. And what that means is, all these companies that we list here, Department of Homeland Security, State Department, Department of Energy, Microsoft, Cisco, Intel, Deloitte, many, many others, 33,000 different companies use this platform, Orion. So the supply chain attack involves bad guys breaking into the company's SolarWinds and manipulating the Orion software updates that go out to the customers. You're familiar with updates, your operating system, your phone, your browsers, your antivirus all want updates. It's no different for these IT security system administration tools. So when the bad guys compromised SolarWinds and were able to get into the code that runs the SolarWinds Orion tool platform, they were able to put in their own malware, their own pieces of software that when installed to these 33,000 users, because that's the supply chain part, right? They get into the company, they poison the updates that are going to go out to the customers, because when you're talking about these system administration tools, IT security folks and IT system administrators are nothing if good about updating stuff. So when Orion's tool set says there's an update, it's getting installed. And when it got installed, it included packages, software components that were malicious, that allowed these possible state actors to steal data, to maintain persistence, meaning continue to have access into the organizations that they were in due to these Orion software updates being distributed far and wide. And so the impacts varied, but if you consider the who's who of the customers, having a possible state actor, state threat actor, hackers being bankrolled and funded and resourced by another state government, having them inside the networks of the Department of Energy, the State Department, parts of the Pentagon, Cisco, they really had their run of those organizations in some cases. And because of that, we believe this to be more of a state actor, looking at these companies, trying to find more information about, maybe high level diplomatic type discussions and data and communications from the State Department, intellectual property from the Department of Energy, same with Microsoft, Cisco, and Intel, some of their intellectual property. And really the scope isn't still known of how bad this might have been. So a big significant attack, one that we have not seen really in the breadth of a tool that kind of holds the keys to the kingdom in terms of your data center and security tools. So that was a bad one. And then lastly, JBS. JBS is a Brazil-based and US meat supplier. They are considered the world's largest meat processor. I thought that they even had a couple of plants here in Illinois, but I didn't have a chance to double check that. They were hit by ransomware also. In this case, it was the Revil Russian cyber gang. This Russian cyber gang was known for hitting a bunch of large companies at the same time with ransomware. JBS paid an $11 million ransom in order to get their data back. But while they were doing this, while companies are responding to these attacks, a lot of disruptions are occurring. They can't operate plants. They can't continue their supply chain and distribute their products. So it, again, is causing problems in the real world. But it's not just big companies. Small businesses are reportedly more frequently attacked. Phishing scams, ransomware hits home users too. Home users get identity theft and account compromise. Fake websites are presented to home users for password theft and account compromise as well. And more, we're seeing bad guys using text message code scams in order to, further their activity towards, an identity theft goal or account compromise, or even the installation of ransomware. So, the big companies make news, but the kind of conglomerate of all the small businesses and the home users that get hit is just as big a story, but we don't hear it because they're smaller and there's so many of them. But, probably a lot of you have personal anecdotes or know somebody who had something like this happen. And, even myself, my wife and I have had some been victims of identity theft in the past. And it's a pain in the butt. So I'm going to give you some top 5 security tips. These are my top 5 security tips, and take them or leave them. But this is what I tell people. So number 1, don't trust. I like to say that skepticism is one of your best tools in your cyber defense toolkit. Always be on alert, and remember that your information is valuable. A lot of times, a home user doesn't think about that. But if somebody can get your email account, username and password, they could sell that. That could be what gets them into your bank account. And so take it seriously. It is valuable. Doesn't matter who you are. Your information is valuable, and it's important to take steps. Secondly, in terms of skepticism, in general, if you didn't ask for it, don't trust it. What do I mean there? An email that gets sent to you saying, hey, your password for the bank needs to be reset. Did you ask for it to be reset? No, don't trust it. If you get a text message saying, click this link because, here's some information you need from from the Social Security Administration or the IRS now that it's tax time. You didn't ask for that. You're not expecting it. Don't trust it. There's nobody who's going to punish you for deleting a text message, even if it was something legitimate. You can always find other ways to verify stuff that you get unsolicited. So for instance, if you get an email saying, hey, your bank has been compromised and we need everybody to change their passwords, what do? if it were me, I would go to Google, or I would go directly to my bank website and look and see where that information might be. Because if there's been a big breach at your bank and they want everybody to reset their passwords, you'd think there'd be a press release or an announcement up there on your bank's website. And if they sent you something in the email, that's, that could be a pointer or a suggestion to you to, hey, let me look this up myself, rather than take what somebody sent me out of the blue and trust it as, legitimate. Again, don't feel afraid or bad to delete or ignore when people send you text messages, social media requests. There's always people trying to friend you on Facebook that maybe look like somebody you maybe knew. Ignore them. If it's not somebody you know, don't be afraid. Don't feel bad, because by and large, there's bad guys out there and they're trying to figure out how to trick you. Simple truth. They are trying to trick you. And one thing we're seeing, and even just this last week, we got an email from our IT guy here in the College of Engineering. There are some pretty convincing looking emails, and we've seen emails going to College of Engineering faculty members pretending to be from the dean. And that shows that an attacker has done their homework. They have found out who the faculty members are and who the dean is, and they've sent out messages pretending to be them in the hopes that you'll provide this fictitious dean at the end of the bad email with some information about your username, password, whatever it might be. They're getting better. You can't just look at an email and say, if it's got bad grammar and punctuation, we know it's a scam, because they're getting more and more convincing. And even today, things that I receive, I'm skeptical, but I get blown away at how legitimate some of these bad guys are. So visit the sites you need to directly. Don't click links that are sent to you. Don't download software that are sent to you. If you didn't go asking for it, don't accept it. Bottom line, skepticism is huge. All right, passwords. Passwords are our first line of defense. They are also a necessary evil. There's way better ways of handling account security than passwords, but passwords have one advantage. They're cheap. They're very cheap. They're free to use. They are commonplace and we know how to use them. So that's our first line of defense. So that said, how can we make passwords better to protect our online identities and accounts? Use strong passwords that are long and complex and not based on words in the dictionary. So a string of characters that is uppercase, lowercase, complex characters, numbers, punctuation, 20 characters long. That's a fantastic password, but it's totally infeasible to memorize. That's the problem. And so there's challenges, but I'm going to show you a couple of tools, and that's the next item here is consider a password manager. A couple of tools that I recommend that can help you better have better password hygiene, I guess. And a password manager helps you generate good, strong passwords, stores those in a safe way, and makes it just an easier way to maintain good passwords across all the different accounts that you might use. Okay. Two-factor authentication. Excuse me. This is my top recommendation. So if you get anything from today, my recommendation to you is, whenever possible, consider using two-factor authentication. So what is two-factor authentication? It can be a little confusing to get started if you've never used it. But two-factor authentication is when you have some sort of secondary password or number that's been generated or some other mechanism. Once you put in your username and password, if you're trying to go to your bank, you put in your username and password, good. It says, okay, welcome. Now tell me the number that's on your authenticator app. You have to have a second factor to get into your bank account. So those can be through applications on your phone that you've synced with your bank account. Those can be done via text message, which is really not the way to do them today. Sometimes they'll send you a code via email, which again is not a great way. Really the best way to do this two-factor, sometimes you'll see MFA, multi-factor authentication, is with one of the apps that I'll show you in a couple minutes that runs on your phone and helps you keep a centralized place for this additional security protection. Having two-factor authentication greatly limits the impact of most account breaches. So for instance, let's say you've got your Bank of America account and you've turned on two-factor authentication. So in order for anybody to get into that account, they have to have your username, they have to have your password, and then they have to have a special 6 or 8 digit code that gets displayed to you on your phone through a special app and changes every minute. Okay, so if your account gets compromised, if the bank gets hacked and all the usernames and passwords get out, if you click on a link and you're tricked into providing your bank username and password, bad guys have that. They can go through the first line of defense for getting into your bank because they've stolen your username and password. But without having that app that runs on your phone that has that one-time password, that two-factor authentication piece, they can't go any further. That's the huge thing. That will stop so many of these attacks against individual accounts. And more you're seeing with the higher value accounts, brokerage accounts, bank accounts, social media accounts, your main email account. Those are things you should really consider implementing two-factor authentication. So it can be confusing to get started. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of the more common apps to do two-factor authentication. And with those two, any place that you're trying to set up this with like a bank account or an email account or something like that, the Google and the Microsoft one I'll show you in a second usually have really great support documentation and information for getting that going. And those are what I would really recommend. And again, having that phone is the protection with that app that will save you in many cases. And this is kind of just a quick look at what this multi-factor or the two-factor authentication is. So with logins, we usually look at 3 different login components. And if you use 2 of them, it's considered multi-factor or two-factor authentication. So first would be a password and a username. And then a second would be something you have, something you are, or something you know. So something you know is your username and password. Something you are would be like a biometric, like a fingerprint scanner or something like that. And something you have is like your phone, which has the app running that gives you the password code. That's what multi-factor authentication is. By and large, though, you're going to be doing passwords and usernames as something you know, and something you have is going to be your phone and that app. The fingerprint thing, the biometric thing isn't very commonly rolled out for logging into sites. You'll see that on your phone as like a convenience feature. Like if you want to open up your bank, you can click with your finger. That opens it securely on your phone, but it's not like the bank knows your thumbprint and can tell. It's more of a convenience feature on your phone. So that's what two-factor authentication is. And I'm happy to discuss more if people have questions, because really that's the best. Operating systems, software updates are critical. These are the features that the software manufacturers and vendors want you to have because they fix problems. Maybe those problems are security related. Maybe they're related to stability and reliability issues in your software. But software updates are things that need to happen. So most operating systems do them automatically. If your computer is through like SIU, my work computer here is controlled by the SIU IT people, and they tell my computer when to install the updates after they've figured out which ones I should get and made sure that they're reliable. So do those updates. My wife is absolutely terrible about sitting there and seeing the install updates and restart, install updates and shut down. She doesn't want to have 3 minutes of disruption for a software update to install, and so she'll put it off and put it off and put it off. But I'm here to tell you, don't put those off. Do them. Do the updates. A lot of times now, software like Chrome and Firefox, they'll do them automatically, and you'll just get notified when you start it up and shut it down. Hey, we've updated, and that's fantastic. Seeing the trend for updates happening automatically has been awesome. So make sure that you do those updates, and also your antivirus and anti-malware tools as well. Backups are a must. So one of the things that you can consider are these cloud backup sync services like Dropbox, like Box. There's tons of them that are out there that let you back up software or data, pictures, videos, whatever you have. You can also use an offline backup tool like a USB hard drive. What I would always recommend, store one copy of your important stuff in the cloud, store one copy on a hard drive that's local to you, because attacks can happen against the cloud, attacks can happen against your computer, but if you have a USB hard drive that you backed everything up onto and you've unplugged it, if it's sitting there over on your desk drawer, unplugged, it can't get hit by ransomware. So if your computer gets totally hacked and compromised and you've got to buy a new computer, that drive that's offline that you did a backup on can save your data, okay? And then in industry, we always talk about having multiple backups, and that's important for your home users, because think about this third item. What do you have to lose? Do you have years and years worth of research documents and things you've written? Do you have photos of your kids and family? All those types of things you may have lost track of. And just the other day, I was wishing that I still had a paper that I wrote when I was an undergrad 20 years ago. And I thought I backed it up. I'm sure I had it, but I can't find it now, 5 houses later and 24 years older, and I can't find it. So something to consider, something to make a plan for. Know where your data is stored. That can be difficult too, but you've got to figure out where your data is stored in order to be able to target your backups. Don't forget about that smartphone too. It's good to back those up. Smartphone security tips, and I'm running out of time. I don't know, but I mean, if I can stick around extra for questions if that's acceptable. I'm almost done here, but I'll finish up and hopefully get questions. And again, I don't care to stay another 10 minutes or so if people have questions. Smartphone security tips. Consider the app reputation before installing. So what do I mean by that? You see an app that's got 2 stars in the App Store and 15 people have installed it. I'd probably avoid that one. You find an app that you want for music or for learning how to play guitar or a game or something like that, and it's got 42,000 installations and a 4-star rating. I think I would choose one of those, because by and large, if they get good ratings and the crowd, the crowd of the users has provided good feedback, I'd feel more safe installing apps like that. But again, be cognizant of what you're installing, because more and more apps on your phone try to get access to other things than just what they really need. You may see apps that say, hey, I want to use your microphone. I want to know your location. I want access to your contacts. Why? Maybe they're selling your contacts and you've clicked OK on the user agreement, which says they can. Just be skeptical there too. And kind of, limit the apps that you use of old, unused junk apps, uninstall them. Backing up your phone, whether you use an Apple iPhone or an Android, they've got built-in cloud-based protections or accounts where you can back up your phone pretty easily. Another thing, text messages. Text messages, there's a commercial going around where a mailman is delivering things and telling people, are you using text messages? Well, text messages are just like a postcard. Text messages are essentially sent in the clear from one phone to another. And, it's not the easiest thing to do, but there are ways that bad guys can intercept text messages and can see the contents. So that might be a concern for you. Using other types of tools like WhatsApp may be a little more secure. If you're on an iPhone and you're sending messages to another iPhone, the iMessage tool, it provides good security and privacy. The last thing about that, though, is the use of text messages as multi-factor, where you log into your account and it says, we're going to send a text message number to your phone. Those are being phased out because the ability of bad guys to intercept text messages and get those codes. So limit that. So here are some tools. I will zip through these real quick and tell you a couple that I personally use and personally have experience with. Password Manager, LastPass. This is my favorite. I've been using this for about 8 years, and I'll be happy to make these slides available. Maybe I'll even type up just a one-page recommendation sheet and put these on there that I can get to Roland. Maybe he can get out to you. So LastPass is one I've used for a long time. We use a paid subscription that is a family version that allows our family, because we have 3 kids, and allows us to kind of share and oversee passwords. So that way, if my wife really needs to get onto something, she can find my account login information. And this is a tool that securely keeps your passwords in one spot. It allows you to generate passwords that are very secure when you need to create a new password. It saves that password, and then it'll fill in the password when you visit the website. So it's really, really convenient and helpful. It wraps your database of all your saved passwords in some pretty strong encryption, and then it's protected with a single password to get into it. So the way it works, on my browser, I have the tool as an extension. You log into LastPass with your email. You type in your one password for LastPass. Okay, you've got one password that opens the whole password vault. That one password should be strong. And then I have mine set up with multi-factor. So in order to get in mine, I've got to have my phone in that number. Once you're in there, you've got access to all the accounts you've created, and I've used mine for years. And even like the one time I have to sign on and create a new account at this one, this one service so that my kid can buy a wrestling shirt or something. If I ever need to go back, that password is all saved in there automatically, and it's easy to do. So that's a fantastic tool. Another one called Bitwarden is a free one that has gained a lot of popularity. I don't have a lot of experience, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. The two-factor authentication, I know I've reached the end of my time, almost done. The 2 tools that are commonly used for that, the Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator, both of these are available in the App Store and Google Play. You install these. All the major services, banks, things like that, that allow two-factor authentication will support one of these tools to provide on your phone that rotating time-based password number that you use to provide the second factor to get into those important accounts. Antivirus and anti-malware. I get asked a lot, what antivirus do you recommend? I use the free stuff. You know, there's a lot out there that they charge you a yearly fee for. Microsoft's Defender tool works great. It comes on your computers. That's what I've used for years. Our computer labs here that I manage, I run Defender, the free tool. For a Mac, Sophos, they put out a home version that's free, unless things have changed. And it's a good little antivirus tool that you can use as well. Virtual private networks, I get asked about a lot. A VPN helps protect your network traffic by wrapping it in encryption. These can be a technical challenge to get going, but if you find yourself traveling a lot, hopping onto Wi-Fi networks that you're not comfortable with, who maintains them or the security, you can get a VPN, which will help kind of give you some peace of mind about your traffic getting someplace safely and then out to where it's destined to. It is best to avoid open Wi-Fi networks that don't have passwords on them. Those I'd stay away from. If you had to use one, a VPN can help. This private internet access is one that I've used. They're reasonably priced. They're very easy to work with, and they support phones and different operating systems. It's a good one. Many VPNs are offering free services, but those free services are typically very, very limited in the amount of data you can use them for, and have poor performance, which means you're not going to like them. So you want to, you'll want to upgrade. And then also some of the paid services are bundled with other tools like security scans and stuff like that. Last one, I think, backup tools. Operating systems like Microsoft Windows and Mac OS have tools to help you back up your software or your software and your data. Take a look at those and see if that might be one that'll meet your need. Other types of apps can store to cloud, some cloud like OneDrive or Dropbox or Amazon. They can offer local through like that USB hard drive, and then continuously provide protection. So like if you made a mistake on a document yesterday you were working on, some of these apps can actually return you to that part of the document, what they call as a continuous protection model. Also Google Docs, Office 365, if you use those for creating your common Word, spreadsheets, PowerPoints, those types of things, they have some really nice features built in. That said, Google Drive and Microsoft OneDrive are nice free cloud-based spots for storing data as well. One of the ones that I've used in the past is iDrive. If you use your siu.edu email, I believe you'll get a discount. And iDrive is good because it'll provide you with up to 1 terabyte of space for your data. They support multiple devices. So I have it on my computer, my wife's computer. We have it on our phones and my kid's computer. It does scheduled backups, and it'll do backups to a hard drive that you can take offline and store someplace too. So it's a good tool. All right, that was a lot. I don't want to, I know I want to respect your format. If we need to stop here, I appreciate the time, but if we got time for questions, I've got time. Roland?
Yeah, can you see the chat, Tom? If you anything there that some of it you might have answered already?
Yeah, let me look. Okay, so what is an RSO? An RSO is a registered student organization, okay? What should one do if we own a Samsung phone or tablet? Really, with that first discussion about Samsung and their data being stolen, nothing right now. This isn't something that we would know anything about this soon. We know that some of their source code came out, but we don't necessarily know that it's been exploited yet. Once we see that it may have some people actively exploiting it, meaning targeting it, then you need to be more concerned. But Samsung, Apple, Google, they are all very good about pushing out those updates to the phones when you need them to. And so, pay attention, mindful if your phone's telling you to to do updates. What encryption methods do ransomware agents use? What do you mean by that, Thomas? We'll give you a second. Suzanne, I sense in some examples the need for more competition. If a major chain supplier is attacked and so many users are affected, would there be less expect if there were more choices? I guess you mean, okay, I get it, Thomas. You know, I guess whether this question is asking, you know, would we expect that having these impacts would open up the doors for other organizations to kind of increase their market share? Maybe is that what you're asking? If you want to clarify, you know, I'm not sure exactly what to answer with that one. For Thomas, RSA, AES, it's really been a variety. Most of the time, it's not going to be RSA because of the crypto overhead associated with that. They want something that encrypts fast. And so a cipher like AES would be one that would be commonly used. AES is a cipher that has lots of open source implementations, meaning people have written code out there to use for encrypting things with AES. AES is considering it's called the Advanced Encryption Standards. It's the US government's current standard on cryptography encryption. So that's one that would be used commonly because it's reliable and it's pretty fast. I have seen reports of other types of crypto algorithms used that were more common over in European countries, but you know, AES is probably the most. How do you distinguish between security updates and software additions you don't really want? Good question. So what I do is get familiar with where the updates show up on your machine. So like when your Windows system, you know, it's usually down in the bottom taskbar. You see a little time to update type of thing. That's where you'll see them. If it comes up in a pop-up and it looks all official, but it maybe is actually a web page that looks like it's a software installation warning, but is going to send you to some sort of nefarious, you know, site where they try to trick you, I would just delete those. You know, I would just close that stuff out because, you know, fake updates are things that people have tried to cause in the past. But I would just get familiar with what is common with your operating system and look for those. One thing, like with your phone, you can always go to your settings and then like under about or general, you should be able to find software and software update within your phone's menu. That's the source. You know, you're getting that right from the manufacturer. That's where I'd go. And it'll tell you if there's an update you need to download, or if it's update that needs to be installed, it's already updated. That's where I would do those. Okay.
Tom,
Yeah.
this
Yes.
is Suzanne. I was thinking of the problem that you raised with one company being attacked, and it was the one that the State Department, Energy Department, and many private sectors all used. What I was thinking was if there were a number of those programs out there, then maybe Energy would be using one, State Department would be using another, Cisco would be using a third, and therefore the impact would be less serious for us. That was what I was getting at in terms of more competition.
Yeah, so I understand that, but it does kind of ultimately come down to, you know, the SolarWinds Orion tool is a good tool that does the job that it's designed to do well, and that's why it's been so popular and so effective. You know, that's why it was went after, I believe, because it's easy to find out what companies might be using a security tool just by doing some Googling. or looking around on social media. Sometimes that, the fact that that Cisco is a client might be something that SolarWinds would put on their webpage to get more clients. So yeah, I understand what you're saying, but in this case, it was kind of a, they have built a strong product and many years of use and following by folks who've probably used it at one company and moved to another company and started using it there and familiar with it, and it's an easy to use product. And so it was, it was one that made sense for those state actors to target and take advantage of. But sure, I mean, one thing gets hacked, another doesn't. That's certainly possible, depending, on all sorts of different fronts, with regards to different software applications or services, things like that. Like if Microsoft OneDrive gets hacked, well, there's Google Drive that's separate. There's Amazon's cloud storage. There's these others that maybe make less of an impact. But this was sort of more of a niche type of software that really fits a purpose well, and was used for that purpose for a large, and the software was designed for large companies that have complex IT environments. So that's what we had. I mean, that's what it was. Anything else? Thomas, if there's more I can help you with offline, send me an email. I love talking crypto.
You did mention perhaps sending us a handout on the last things you were talking about.
Yeah, I will. I can make these slides into a PDF, and I'll work over the next couple of days to make a PDF one page with this. I've done those in the past, but they've changed, and I have new recommendations. So I can do that, and I'll have that for you, Roland.
If you could send that to me or Gary, that would be great.
Yes, I will. I will do that. As an old person, I am not fast enough to use two-factor authentication. Tips. Well, with the two-factor authentication, the one that I usually use is the Google Authenticator. So if you log into your account and you type in your username and password at your bank, it says, okay, now provide the secondary, the number on your phone. Those numbers usually rotate for every 60 seconds. So what I would just do is, if you get on there and there's a number and you're not fast enough to type it in, wait till it rotates around and you get the next one and type that one in. That might help speed things up. Have it open, and ready to go when you log in, maybe, so that the number's up on your phone. That could help. But when you use some of these password managers like LastPass, those will help you populate your username and password on the bank, because they've got it stored in that secure password vault, and they know your username and password for you because that's what the program does. And that'll help log you in faster with less interaction. It's one thing I do trust, and I use it on mine. And then you just have your phone with the Authenticator app ready. And I would think that would be a way to speed up that entry. Beth, hopefully that helps.
Thank you very much, Tom. We really appreciate this, and obviously people are interested. We'll look forward to your handout and appreciate your offer for more contact if people want to. Perhaps your email address would be on the handout.
Yep, and I got it right here too for people if you want to write it down, but I will, I'll get you that to probably sometime in the next, probably Thursday, Friday morning. I should be able to get all that to you.
That'd be great. Thank you again very much on behalf of all of our group.
I'm really happy to be here, and anytime I can help, let me know. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, all.